We'll tell you about that in the next segment. You're gonna want to hear this one, guys. Joining us right now, we've been talking about it all morning. Fresh off his award-winning show in Houston, Texas, the site of the victorious Houston Texans over the Colts. Former NFL quarterback, current sexiest man in radio. We're so happy to welcome back my dear friend, my brother, the one, the only Sean Salisbury. Good morning, Sean. It's me and Jason. How are you?
Good to be on with you, too. I'm doing wonderful, man. Fun football season, a lot going on. It's good to be back, man. Thank you.
Let's just get right into it because everybody's clamoring for Sean's takes. Always honest, always forthright. And, oh, by the way, played under center. Knows a little bit about the game of football. We just played, and Sean, I know you just did your show, so forgive me if you already played this or are aware of it, but a clip from last night's Manning cast when Ayuk missed the dive in the end zone, a beautiful ball from Brock Purdy, and Peyton Manning just basically went off. This is why you get the contract stuff done early. This is why you're in camp. This is why you don't catch balls at a high school field from some 45-year-old ex-quarterback or whatever. You need real game time situations. And all we ever hear is, hey, the guy's got to get his money. We respect that. Players and coaches are very they're very kind to people. But Sean, do you agree with what Peyton said? Is that something you'd be thinking if you were the quarterback? And do they have a point?
Well, listen, if Manning says it, first of all, consider the source, and I mean this in a positive way. That dude's standard is different than the normal human being on the earth, and his grind, practiced in, I'm being serious about this now, practice in Indianapolis, practice in Denver, especially in Indy, did not end until Peyton Manning was happy to practice that how the drill ended. I'm being, run it again, let's do this again. He literally, not as an arrogant thing, but he wanted it done right. And you know what the grind is. I also talked to a former receiver that played with him. I said, what was it like? He said, you didn't want to disappoint him. So, yeah, in Manning's point, listen, I'll tell you a quick story, and then I'll share it quickly so we can get through this. But a quarterback that came to Denver, they were throwing routes on air, just routes on air. His first year there, this quarterback comes in, Manning's there. They're throwing routes on air, meaning the receivers are in a route. There's no coverage. They're just warming up, throwing curl routes. And quarterback throws it. Peyton says, what was the coverage? And the quarterback says, I don't worry, it's against air. There was no coverage. He asked him again, what's the coverage? It was against air. There's no coverage. Finally, the third time he got it. Oh, Peyton Manning doesn't play against air when you're throwing routes on air. He plays 11 on 11. He wanted to know why you're throwing the curl. This is in the offseason. He wants to know why you're throwing the curl. He wanted to say, well, the Sam linebacker got to the flat, turned his shoulders, and I threw the curl in behind off his ear because we had leverage and there was a window there. That's how he wants you to think. So he's spot on. But they're both right. Now I'm going to tell you why. You just got to understand you're going to sacrifice a little game early on. If you're Brandon Ayuk and you're the 49ers, you're going to be off a little. It won't take long. But if you're Peyton Manning, you want him there. He's a grinder quarterback. He wanted his best there. So he's right. That ball probably does get caught. And I got news for you. There's not a soul on the planet who could have thrown it better, and you walk out there and hand it to him. You couldn't hand it off better than that throw by Brock Purdy. So Ayuk will make that catch most of the time. But, yes, Peyton's right. But the other side of being right is I'm not anybody's wallet. Why would I ever? And I don't Peyton would have done that to a teammate. He might have encouraged him to get to camp. But Peyton's not going to get into somebody's wallet and say, listen, come back in for $2 million a year less. You knew that wasn't going to happen. So I had no problem with it. Either way, but, yes, that catch will normally be made. And in a game where it could have made a difference instead of a field goal, that catch has to be made as they continue to move forward.
Sean, as a former quarterback yourself, what is the value of, like, for example, last night's game, late scratch, Christian McCaffrey, Mason gets the call, but we all know that Shanahan, his DNA, he wants to run. They did run the ball. They ran it effectively. So what does it mean to a quarterback to have a ground game, no matter who's in there, that can produce? What's the value of that?
Well, the biggest value is trust, because when McCaffrey comes back, when he needs spelled, you got a guy who proved you in the opener against what really is, guys, they didn't show it last night. That's a really good front seven with the New York Jets. That's a good defense. So that's that trust, because you may think going into practice what the backup brings from training camp, but you really don't till it's real. Till it's real, and you got to carry the load the entire game, not spot where you're carrying 5 or 6 times. And he did. And, not knowing McCaffrey's situation, I'm sure most of the week, hoping he could play for the 49ers, and to get in and trust it. Now, we know Kyle and Mike Shanahan have great results running the football, but it's not just the system. The system matters, but Trent, they're pretty good up front, and they also have some damn good people to push with the tight end and Trent Williams getting their blocks. And the runner, patient. You've got to be a patient runner, and they showed it. So trust is number one, but for the quarterback, guys, look around the league. And I know Belichick mentioned it on McAfee's show, but I said it on my show coming in this morning. This morning we came on, it didn't feel like the passing game was overly devastating this week. And the teams wanted to prove that they could run it, protect young quarterbacks, run the football effectively. We saw it here with Mixon. Around the league, it felt like people played a little bit more old school, trying to get not lose games by throwing it, but try to win games and prove that you're tough and that you're physical. And the 49ers did not back down. That's another thing. Normally, when you lose a guy like McCaffrey, offensive game plan has to change. It didn't change a bit. Now, it'll be more effective in the pass game when McCaffrey's catching out of the backfield. But I love that Kyle Shanahan believes, and what that does is it permeates through your team that you can trust our roster. That's why we didn't cut him. He proved that he belongs, and now you get a big win against a team that is still a playoff caliber team, but sure didn't look at least defensively in the front seven last night.
The return of Sean Salisbury, Sactown Sports. Sean, it's so hard in week one in a vacuum to make decisions about teams. Obviously, San Francisco, like the Chiefs, they're going to be elite until they're not. But what did you take from the Jets? Is this a team with Aaron Rodgers that you think can compete in the AFC for a playoff spot, or are we not same old but similar old Jets?
No, this isn't going to be the same old Jets. Their roster, Dave, is loaded. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of really good players, and they're deep. Now, Robert Saleh needs them to get to the playoffs and go deep, because if not, they will change coaches again, and you and I both know that. They have no problem doing it, and Robert's a good coach, and he's finally got a guy that he can trust at that position. And you can see that Rodgers still isn't moving quite like we expect him to, because he's so great at manipulating the pocket. He's going to get better. I had this team in the playoffs. I do, and I still do. And it's so easy to overreact. What we saw, they didn't get beat by a hack team. They got beat by the 49ers, who are a lot of people's favorite to win again, and they are loaded as well. So the roster is too good. They're injury-free for the most part. They're going to, and the AFC East proved after week one they're pretty damn good. We already know Buffalo and Miami can play, and New England goes on the road and beats Cincinnati. So it's going to be a good division. I would caution anybody. I think it's way hyperbolic and a major overreaction if we say Rodgers is done, the defense isn't that good, and this is a team that wins 6 games. I don't see that. They ran into a good team. They weren't sharp, and they got gashed in a run game. They got to go back to fixing it. But judging from the personnel, I don't see how they don't. And Rodgers will play better. If he's on the field, they immediately give you every chance to win. The New York Jets, in my mind, are a playoff team, and I think they're going to battle for the division when all is said and done.
How about the Niners? You've already kind of praised them. I thought they looked really good after maybe a little bit of a slow start, but once they got into a rhythm, the O-line, the D-line, they were just dominant last night. What do you think of their overall season outlook?
Yeah, what's not to like, really? Jason, and I think we all know that. What's not to like is when they get to the January of the Super Bowl in February is to finally close this thing out, and they're capable. But, man, you get Ayuk back, they can explode. They're versatile. They've got great bandwidth. They're proven they've got depth. They can protect the quarterback. They've got a Pro Bowler kind of guy at every position. And they're physical, but they can finesse you as well. And they've got I still marvel at the national thought of Brock Purdy. If this was Josh Allen doing this his first 2 years, we wouldn't be able to stop. If he was a first rounder, we wouldn't be able to stop praising him. Now, he didn't have his best game, but He still is so good and accurate. He's gotten to the point now you can win with him when he doesn't have his best game. So I don't know what we're asking for. If he was a first-round pick, we'd be praising him. If he was Justin Herbert, we'd be praising him. I don't know why we're afraid to praise a 7th-round pick who was last. I guess we don't believe it. But have we seen enough evidence the guy can play? Mm-hmm. And so when you got a leader and a guy who is a tough quarterback who can make the throws on time and accurate, and you got their personnel on both sides of the ball and their coaching staff, there's no reason to think when we're talking in December and January that they're not battling for the 1 seed. They are a complete team, but they do You're not going to kick 6 field goals and beat good teams all the time. Was it 6 or 5? I think it was 6, right?
Yeah.
But it's 6 field goals? Yeah. Those are fine and dandy, but I guarantee you they're talking today how they want points, more touchdowns as opposed to field goals. But if you're going to have to kick them, make them. And that's a good thing. 49ers are as complete as there is in the NFC, and I don't think there's anybody that could doubt that. I trust the quarterback there as much as I do any other quarterback in the NFC as well.
Sean Salisbury with us. Sean, I need to make as I did earlier, the blanket statement for those just tuning in. We understand with Deshaun Watson, there are more important things than off-field stuff, and allegedly he committed yet another terrible crime, and we're just going to talk football standpoint here real quick. Sean, I brought up earlier that, the touchstone, the mark for worst trades in NFL history, everybody always goes to Herschel Walker, Cowboys, Vikings. And I'm thinking when you combine, forget about the reasons. That's a whole different topic. When you combine contract, when you combine suspensions, and when you combine on-field performance, I know you're doing a show in Houston. C.J. Stroud and that Texans team looks like one of the best up-and-coming teams, and largely, I think we figured out they have got 9 or 10 starters out of the draft picks they received for Cleveland. I'm starting to think, Sean, this has a potential chance of being a trade that matches up with that Herschel Walker deal.
Yeah, and potential being the key word, but you're spot on, Dave. I'm going to tell you, in this town after his rookie year, meaning Stroud, there's not a soul that wanted Watson back. And remember, we're 3 years removed or whatever it is from him being the leading passer in the NFL at 4,800 yards. But it's not the same guy, whether the stuff off the field affects him, the injuries. He hasn't been as durable in Cleveland, whatever it is. And we'll stick to on the field right now because we know the obvious stuff off the field. He's different. He feels a little more skittish. He's not as explosive to get. And now he'll make great plays. He's not going to play like that every week. He's too talented. And that team, speaking of a talented roster, when Chubb's on the field, they are extremely gifted on both sides. Another team that I didn't expect to get bullied like they did, the Cowboys just made it easy on their defense wasn't as effective. So, but they're going to be better. As far as Watson, it will be the worst. If this continues this play, and I believe in my mind, there are already people in that building, not just fan base, but if you're like Andrew Berry and you're Kevin Stefanski and you're sitting in an office, there's got to be a little bit of you that's saying, damn, did we miss this? Are we not getting the guy that we thought we'd get on the field? Well, he's been just a mere, shell of his former self. If this continues like it is, like some good, some average, you 230 guaranteed million, all those players, a better quarterback now that nobody would want Watson back on the field. Yeah. Forget the other stuff. Yeah, I would say that it's headed towards, if this continues, as a team that they made a bad decision. Now they're hoping one game doesn't do it and they're a playoff team. But Watson's a big reason why they're not playing great. And that's a problem for $230 million.
Sean, I know it's 1 week, but in Houston, Diggs' opening performance, Mixon's opening performance, to go with what Stroud is doing, how excited is everybody down in your area?
Incredibly. They validated exactly not only what they felt about their offseason, but when they went and got him, that they needed a few extra things to happen for us to put them in that Chiefs, Ravens, 49ers, that class of when we talk, their names mentioned. I didn't say better, but mentioned. This is another team, what's not like. Daniil Hunter and Will and their defense, adding Daniil Hunter in the offseason, a big get. Drafting Bullock, look at the impact he made. First-time guys here in Houston. Diggs, a couple touchdowns. Nico Collins, who's been here, showing that he's a star. Joe Mixon, I said on my show, guys, and back when they made this decision to bring him in, that I thought it would be one of the 5 best decisions in the NFL in the offseason. And I think I cheated him. If this continues, he's durable. He doesn't miss games. He can catch it out of the backfield like your guy. And they got a guy who's a patient runner coming from that 49er situation, that zone scheme. Mixon fits perfectly here. And they were missing physicality in the run game. That's what kept them down last year. They got it. And Joe Mixon's a full-grown man and a monster. If that trend continues with the way Stroud throws it in play action, they're going to be hell to pay. They will be around in mid-January if this continues. I think it was a great pickup, and I think Joe Mixon's going to validate that he was as important as any pickup that they had. Yeah, the people they went out and got to a man, all of them validated what Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans wanted. Production from your stars and added depth and physicality. This team's real now, I'm telling you, and they didn't even play their best game this past weekend. Bandwidth. They got bandwidth now.
Speaking of full-grown men, that is Sean Salisbury, the quickest segment in sports radio. The time just flies by. Brother, great to have you back. Great to hear your voice. We look forward to talking to you each and every week during the football season, my man.
Great to be on. Thanks, guys.
All right,
Thank
take
you.
care. Sean Salisbury. Look, we're going to pause for 30 seconds.